Welcome to the Ashby Room. Today I'm joined by Jordan Smith. Jordan is the Director of Lean Portfolio Management, focused on business transformation and operations at Pacific Scientific, where they make precision pyrotechnic systems. In this episode, we discuss Jordan's career progression as an engineer, business development professional, and a business unit leader through organizations focused in robotics and automation. We talk about the Fortive business system, inherited from Danaher and based on the original Toyota production system. We also discuss how large enterprises can utilize GenAI tools today. Jordan shares how he decided to apply to Haas and talks about the fireside chats he organized to discuss special topics among our classmates, such as real estate investing and AI applications. Without further ado, please enjoy this pleasant conversation with Jordan Smith. Cool. Well, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, glad to be here, Edward.
Yeah, we just had some banh mi, some vermicelli. Fitting in a podcast in a really busy week is always difficult. So thanks for setting up the time or taking out some time. I've seen you running around like crazy between classes or in class,
unfortunately,
taking meetings and whatnot.
Yeah.
Maybe let's start with your new role. Like, what are you doing for work and why are you so busy?
Yeah, I think anytime you start a new role, like at least for myself, I want to hit the ground running, make a good impression. And there's so much to learn. The new company I'm at, although it's still part of the Fortive umbrella, is a completely new industry, completely new products, new team. I think back to our Silicon Valley immersion. One of the CEOs that my group met with mentioned the 3 S's when you're considering a new job opportunity. And I'd never heard of this approach before. I hope I remember all 3, but it was scope, scale, and maybe like size. Yeah, size. And so he said, you never want to do all 3. And I feel like I'm kind of hitting at least 2.5 in this role. New industry, companies also growing really quickly right now, which is something new for me in my career. I'm used to working at companies that have a little bit more conservative growth. And so it's really exciting opportunity. I'm always looking to challenge myself and learn new things. So this is satisfying that itch.
Yeah, and I realized like without context, there's like that makes no sense, right? So how about we do your title, the name of the company, and the parent and like where you came from.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm our Lean Portfolio Management Director, which is kind of like internal Fortive terminology. We have something called the Fortive Business System, and inside of that, the way we manage a company's products is through a process we developed called Lean Portfolio Management. And so it's a role that's part strategy, part business process. And as I mentioned, it's at a company called Fortive, publicly traded, ex-Danaher company. It was split off from Danaher Corporation. And inside this company, I think we've got 18 or 19 operating companies in the portfolio, one of which I'm working at now called Pacific Scientific.
Yeah, and I remember touring Pacific Scientific in my undergrad as a mechanical engineer, and they did, I just remember precision explosives. Yeah. And it was one of those like, oh, what could that possibly mean? It's like not too nefarious, we're talking like maybe some kinetic effects, but also like you're talking about emergency exit or what was
egress,
it called? Ejector systems for cockpits, right? Things like that.
Yeah.
So very cool.
Yeah.
I think I like sent a resume at the time, but it was like, I'm an undergrad, like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, this sounds kind of cool. But they were in Morgan Hill, I believe. Is that correct?
Very close. We're in Hollister, California, and Chandler, Arizona.
Yeah. That is such a cool industry. But not where you started. I think you spent about 10 years at Cole Morgan. Is that correct?
Yeah. Also was part of Danaher Fortive Corporation.
Yeah. I know Cole Morgan from my Universal Robots days.
Yeah.
We used you guys. Can you talk about your space in the industry? Like who are your customers? I know we have a lot of overlap in our own careers from our conversation. So maybe talk about, like, give the lay of the land of industrial automation.
Yeah. I don't know if I'll do it justice, but I'll try.
Yeah.
So let's see, Cole Morgan, first of all, amazing history there. 100-year-old company. I think now they're pushing almost 110 years. They were founded in 1916 and evolved over those 100 years. Definitely not the company today that it was when it started. I think they started in optics, periscopes, if I believe correctly. And now they are a servo motor controls and electronics manufacturer. Do a lot of manufacturing in Southwest Virginia. Did a couple years stint there at the headquarters. But the products, you asked where the products go. Universal Robots was a customer of ours, and we provided frameless motors into their articulated arm cobot product line. And but that's just one of many applications. The nice thing about electric motors is they go into a lot of different things. Everything from medical devices to vehicles. So it's a very broad industry, very broad set of applications. There was, some military applications even as well back in those days.
In terms of, you mentioned cobots. I know you spent a lot of time in AMRs, mobile robots.
Yeah.
Can you talk about, from an innovation perspective, like why those motors were especially good? Like what kind of new products and new technologies you saw over your career?
Yeah. Again, probably won't do it justice, but I remember one of our claims to fame at Cole Morgan was our ability for precision, which is kind of like a theme I'm recognizing in my career now. PacSci with the precision explosives, Cole Morgan, the precision motors. These were, very advanced, very expensive, but very capable motors for customers that needed precision control of movement. And so in the cobot, it was all about power density. We were able to pack a lot of power into a small space and make it very precise, and we were the leader in that.
Yeah, paired with harmonic drives,
Yep.
right? You got, from what I understand, the latest generation of cobots are a lot more capable in terms of payload. And it's because they were able to get a higher torque motor in there, like a new technology enabled that.
Yep. Torque density was one of the innovating drives of that industry.
Yeah. How about a little different perspective on your career while we're still on the topic? A lot of business development, technical background, but business development, and I'm very similar. I'm in a very similar position.
Yeah.
Can you talk about where you started in terms of your day-to-day, as an engineer, to customer-facing roles in the industry? Did you like it? What's challenging about it? Yeah. Kind of whatever you want to talk about in that regard.
Sure. Yeah. I started off, graduated with a computer science degree, emphasis in economics from UC Santa Barbara. Understood computer programming, but had spent a lot of time in my undergrad and even in high school doing freelance web development and digital marketing. And so I started off working as web developer and actually came into Cole Morgan as a developer working on their digital strategy. And didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do, but knew that I wanted to work in technology field and wanted to understand the business. And thought maybe engineering was the path I would stay down. But as the longer I got in my career, I unfortunately saw that a lot of older engineers were struggling to find jobs or to kind of keep progressing in their career. And I didn't want to be put in that situation. And so I decided to kind of pivot away from development and engineering and pursued opportunities in marketing and business development. Some of my mentors at the time told me they knew my aspirations to lead a technology company at some point. And they said, well, you need to understand the customer. You need to have some customer facing experience, especially sales experience. So I kind of worked on a path that I was able to get some of that.
Nice. And today you're not doing business development per se.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that pivot and eventually leading into this discussion of high-level strategy versus something actionable, right? Can you talk about what you're working on now? Lean portfolio management.
Yeah.
What does that actually mean?
Yeah. Yeah, so I've continued to just pursue new things in my career, and I feel like if I'm not learning, I'm not growing, and I want to keep growing. And so some of that has come from working at different companies within the Fortive portfolio to get understanding of different industries. So the industrial automation space, I did a couple years in test and measurement after that, and now I'm in aerospace and defense. But also, I feel like to be a good leader in an organization, it's good to have a grasp on what the people that are working for you are doing. And so I've looked for roles that give me a broad perspective on the organization and help me develop that understanding. And so my transition to this role was a couple things. One, eager to learn new industry. Two, there's a couple people I'd worked with in the past that moved to this company that I was excited to work for and with again. And I think that's been a theme in my career too. I really seek out the people more so than the role. And it's about working for good people, a good team. And so in this case, I felt that at Pacific Scientific, at PacSci. And the role is kind of an evolution right now, but I like the opportunity to join the company. And so I'm working on a couple of different things, a little bit of AI and automation project that I just started with a team. And we're also going through our annual strategy cycle right now. And so thinking about the next 1 to 3 years, what the industry looks like, where our company fits into that, and then kind of putting together a plan for executing that strategy.
Yeah, one of our instructors yesterday for Creating Effective Organizations class talks about responsible AI, where her customer was DoD. Mm-hmm. Kind of really similar in applications, I imagine. Like there might be even direct overlap with what you do. Can you talk about one, like what kind of opportunities are you looking at that you can talk about that utilize AI in this space? And then deployment, implementation of it. Yeah. What does that actually look like?
Yeah, one thing I'm really proud about working at Fortive is they've leaned in heavily on artificial intelligence, especially GenAI, and making these tools available to people at their operating companies. We're using the Microsoft Azure cloud, AI, we're using ChatGPT, and I love that there was just a new release of ChatGPT, they call it 4.0, and I think it came out a couple weeks ago now, but the day it came out, we were updated to the latest model, which I just love how forward thinking they are about that, and they just jump on that stuff. And so we're using GenAI a lot internally for our own process improvement and just general productivity efficiency. So I mentioned we've just went through or kicked off our strategy process for the year, and we leaned heavily on GenAI as a research tool and a tool to help us build content to help communicate our strategy. And we're seeing it help us do things that would normally take a team months that we can knock out in a week-long workshop.
Any specific functions like marketing or sales, development, whatever it is, that you're seeing more benefit than others?
Yeah. I've yet to see an area where it can't make people more productive, first of all. This past week, I was in a workshop. We were doing a lot of market work, and it was just amazing the information that it had access to, things that I would think were relatively private or just not readily available. It gave you a single prompt. ask a prompt and it tells you. Now you have to go validate that. And I think this is where the value, like the human value, comes in. I was just talking to my wife about this too, kind of thinking about the future of AI and where we fit in. Kind of to take a small tangent, I feel like right now in the world, it is becoming increasingly harder to get to facts and truth. There's just so much noise out there. There's so many people with different opinions that getting to accurate information is hard. And I think where GenAI can really help is it gets you the content quicker, so you don't have to spend all that muscle researching. You don't have to spend all that muscle writing and like formulating your position. It does all that for you, and then you just need to validate it. So all of your energy goes into the validation and making sure that you've got accurate information versus spending time just having to produce that information. And so trying to circle back now to like company
It's like applications.
applications. So we were using it for market research for this strategy workshop that we were in. But we're also using automation to automate business processes as well. Think of like anything from like accounting processes to order entry processes. You can then redeploy your workforce to make sure that things are done in a higher quality way and more accurate, and redeploy them to think of process improvements versus just like the copy paste and the button click.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of a switch from applications, but when you're talking about optimizing business processes to making things easier, making things cheaper, and ultimately it means cutting, if not workers, then hours. Like you're reducing your labor requirements. So, have you thought any bit about like robots replacing workers? That argument. How do you feel about AI doing the same in this like really exciting wave of developments in the last year? Like, like you just said, ChatGPT 4.0 came out a few weeks ago. Like, and it's insane how fast everything's coming.
And that's so true, as this is all happening so fast, which is why I'm like really happy that Fortive has leaned into it so heavily. They jumped in head first right when ChatGPT started getting traction. Like, we need these tools and we need our people to have access to these tools. And getting back to your question on like, what does that mean for the workforce and everything? I think back to something I think someone said in one of the fireside chats around, I can't remember their words exactly, but essentially, you will be replaced by someone that knows how to use these tools. So learn to use these tools. And so I think the focus then becomes on everyone should start learning these tools. It's such a huge productivity enhancer. And if you don't learn those tools, then those are the jobs that are, I think, at risk of changing, let's say.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Now, you mentioned that fireside chat. You started the fireside chats of the Ember program. Can you talk about, the venue, like set the scene? What does a fireside chat mean? What does it mean for us? And also, like, what are the topics that we've talked about so far?
Sure. Yeah, and full circle here to your podcast. It takes place in the Ashby Room. Have you gone into detail on what the Ashby Room is and why your podcast is named that?
A little bit, but maybe one or two sentences on what the Ashby Room is.
Okay. Yeah. So it's this great place. We all stay each block together in the same hotel. It's a Marriott Residence Inn here in downtown Berkeley. And on the first floor, right across from the lobby, is the Ashby Room. It's essentially a ballroom that we have reserved for the block. And it's a place where we come and gather to hang out, socialize after class. And so for a while, I was kind of commandeering that room for one night a block to hold what we were calling the fireside chat. And that would be a collection of people from our cohort on a panel to discuss a topic, something they were passionate about. And we'd have an audience of the rest of the cohort. Usually had about 25, 30 people show up. and a couple times some outside people as well. And it was just an opportunity. Selfishly, I came here to Haas, one, because excellent institution and, wanted to learn in the classes. But also, one of the things I was really impressed with when I visited was the caliber of people in the classes. And I felt like I wasn't hearing enough from people in class. My favorite parts of class was when people started sharing their own personal stories and things from work and situations. And I was like, I'm not getting enough of this. I need to find a way to pull more of this out of people, but not just for myself, like do it in a way that everyone's benefiting. And so started this fireside chat thing, all volunteer based. We would let the cohort vote on a topic to cover for an evening, and then I'd ask people to volunteer to share their experience.
Yeah, it's, and some of the ones we talked about, real estate investing.
That was a good one.
AI, the landscape of AI. There were a couple more, right?
Yeah, I think we've done 3 now. So, real estate, AI, what was the other one? I don't even remember now.
Yeah, it's okay. We can cut this section out. The fireside chats have been really good in that, like, I think you sourced, like, it just happened so quickly. You sent a message out, hey, we're doing this. You made a flyer.
Yeah. I think that threw some people off. I was like, I'm not going to ask for permission to do this. If people want to come, they can show up.
It's like, did you not consult the student leadership?
Yeah. I don't know if that, like, ruffled some feathers, but I just go.
No, I think you did it well. It went so well that nobody, like, they were like, oh, we can't stop this, It's one of those. And everybody enjoyed it, I think. Yeah. Like, some of the niche topics, like, we have some folks in our cohort that have some really good real estate portfolios and
impressive,
really good strategies on how to manage it, right? I think it's a really valuable source of information. And I know, I debated with you a little bit. It's like, hey, can I record it? And maybe we could put a clip up. You're like, no, let's keep it closed so people can be very candid. And I think that was a good call.
Yeah, I really wanted to protect the people that were volunteering their time to share and not make them feel like they had to censor what they were saying. I wanted this to be an open, casual, worry-free environment where we could really learn things that people might not otherwise tell other people, especially if they're being recorded.
Right, yeah. Now, you mentioned coming to Haas for a particular reason, and maybe not primarily the academics, but just the people that we talk to.
Yeah.
The depth of experience is amazing.
Yeah.
Can you talk about why you initially applied? Like, because how would you have known, like, what kind of people you would have met?
Yeah.
Or maybe you went to one of the class visits, right? Like, can you talk about that application journey and how you ultimately decided to accept?
Yeah. Yeah, and coming out of undergrad, I thought I was done with school. I thought I was like, I'm done. I'm never going back. And it's funny how things change. Like, as you get later in your career, you miss that opportunity to learn in that structured setting. And so I was considering a couple different schools, and I started talking to some friends and mentors at work about it. One person in particular, Ajay, he really pushed me to come to the Bay Area. I was at the time living in Southern California and looking at just schools local to that area, and kind of applied to Haas last minute because I hadn't considered leaving, and it was him that pushed me. He had flown from Seattle to the Bay Area for his MBA, and he said that the cost of the flights is like inconsequential compared to the tuition. It's really not that much.
I thought you were going to say compared to the value you get.
Oh, that too. Well, and that I realized later. Absolutely. I felt like the caliber of the people at this school was beyond what I had seen in other schools that I looked at.
Yeah.
And that was through that class visit. The class visit was huge. If you're evaluating MBAs, definitely go visit in person. It gives you a feel of the people you're going to be with, the instructors, the quality of the instruction, and just the experience.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, the reason I started the podcast, I mean, I kind of had this idea for it reading through the profile book. I was like, wow, like there are a lot of people that I want to get to know better and have, I'm sure have amazing stories. And then I kind of did a soft intro of it at orientation. It's like, what's your fun fact? And I was like, I'm considering starting a podcast with you all. That kind of, it's like one of those commitment devices. I was just like, oh, I guess I better go through with it now, right? And it's funny because it's so easy to not. We heard from the previous class, the leadership team, they were like, yeah, we've always joked about starting our own podcast. And it's like, meanwhile, I was already 2 episodes in. It felt really good to just commit to it. But knowing that, like, we've got a limited amount of time, there's only 2 more blocks until we're on electives.
It's crazy.
There's only so many opportunities to do this again, right? Yeah. Now, you applied, you got in, it's been a year.
Yeah.
We've got 1 more year to go. Do you have plans? Do you have aspirations tied to learnings, networking here?
I don't have specific plans. I think right now I'm in a little bit of survival mode, managing school plus new role, plus we just moved and kind of setting up my family in a new spot. But yeah, I think just these next 2 blocks, as you mentioned, kind of being our last ones all together, are precious. So just making sure I'm spending time with the people in the cohort and just continuing to build those relationships. Yeah.
This term has been tough, to say the least. We're taking creating effective organizations, strategy, and operations.
Yeah.
Can you talk about maybe your favorite one, why? Just a little to dive in a bit about the academics.
Yeah, I don't know if I've developed a favorite. This term has been a little bit different for me than other terms. The operations class is pretty familiar, having been at Danaher Fortive for so long. They are known for their operational excellence. They've built a whole business system around it that's based on the Toyota production system. So I fit in very, easily into the operations class and have been able to kind of cruise through that one, so to speak. Strategy, also living and breathing it at work right now. So maybe I'll say, just because of how new it is, or different from my experiences, the behavioral organizations class, the creative effective organizations. I think that one I'll say is my favorite because, again, I always lean into like learning new things. And so if I'm learning something new, then that's the thing I'm most excited about.
Awesome. On that topic, we've done a couple podcasts now. You've done fireside chats.
Yeah.
Is there anybody you're dying to learn more about via a podcast episode?
I'm dying to learn more about the man behind the microphone.
Oh, well, you'll get a little bit of that each time, each episode, but just a little bit.
More. We need more.
I'll give you a freebie here. Ask me a question.
Oh, I was not prepared for this. All right, so maybe it'll be a long-winded question if we have time for it. But sure. As I'm in like aerospace and defense now, one thing that I'm really admire about this space is this kind of call to a service and like call to a greater good, and we're kind of serving our country. I was taken aback. I was at a trade show recently with a lot of service members. We were, had a booth set up, and a couple of them stopped by and just like thanked us for what we did. Like personally, like thank you for, making these products, and like it means so much to us. And I was like, what? No, please don't thank me. Like, thank you for your service. Like no one should be thanking me. And I've always admired people in service, the sacrifice they make for the country. It feels really good to be at a company that's part of that, having not served myself. I'm really interested to learn more about, I know you served and your service, and the transition out of the military and what you look for now, having been part of that organization, and what you look for now in new organizations. And I work with so many people now that made that transition, but they've stuck to that environment. We're a defense company, so there's kind of a crossover. But you've chose a different path.
Yeah, I would preface with when your situation where a service member was thanking you for what you did.
Yeah,
I feel personally a little weird, a little uncomfortable when people thank me for my service. It's like I've talked about this with other soldiers. It's like, what are you supposed to say back, right? And we kind of settle. It's like, oh, thank you for your support, right? Like that's what can you say? And at one point, my experience, right, is I went to the reserve right out of college. They gave me a contract scholarship for going reserve because they had overassessed second lieutenants the year or two before. They were overstrength. And they're like, well, you're like about to graduate, or you're like 2 years in or whatever. Like, let's get you to the reserve. So we just have that on standby, basically. And I was weighing that decision to take it or not. And I'm doing an engineering degree. Like, if I went active duty out of college, I'd basically be throwing that away by the time I get out of the Army. If I were active duty, I'm looking at business school or something to top off my credentials to try to find a corporate gig, or I spend those 5 years being an engineer first. Mm-hmm. And I have no regrets about doing that. I think it set me up for success in that, like you said, most active duty people get out of the military, say after 8 years, maybe after 20 years. And a lot of them stay adjacent, to DOD, security, something related, something sellable to some HR person that doesn't know what the military does, right? I was fortunate that I could build a depth of experience in industrial automation, in robotics and AI and machine vision. And I've had, going to an exercise in Korea, I think this was like 2015, a bunch of captains, they're like, senior captains just did command, and they're like, yeah, we're thinking about getting out because all I do is PowerPoint now. And I was like, and they were like, what do you have like tips for like the corporate world or like the private sector? And I was like, I think you should prepare to take a pay cut, like basically prepare to start over, and don't think you deserve to be a director in any company, because you have no idea what they do. They don't know if your experience would translate. It probably doesn't. So it is a bit of starting from scratch. And I fortunately didn't have to deal with that. I could leverage the experience having done both at the same time. And so, I recently left the reserve because of this program. Mainly, I went from corporate to startup, and I wanted the flexibility while at a startup to do the weekends, to work overtime, whatever, and not have the reserve obligation. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, I started doing business school.
Filled that time anyway.
Basically, took that weekend back. But I have, no regrets about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fascinated by that walk of life because it's such a different path than I took, and something that I've always deeply respected.
Yeah. Now, switching back, if you had to pick someone other than me, who should the next guest be?
A long-time listener, and I've been waiting to give that question for so long. I'm like, man, I want to learn more about Edward. I'm not prepared with another answer. That was my truest answer.
Yeah. We've got a couple lined up. One sector we haven't done yet is physicians.
Yeah.
We've got like five physicians. So we'll have to revisit. And we've only got so much time. So hopefully we can get a couple more squeezed out before this is all over.
I know their time is so limited, but maybe one of the people that are starting a business and hearing a little bit about their journey and the support they've gotten from Haas along the way, if any.
Yeah.
But I think it seems like this school, people choose this school quite often because of the resources for starting businesses. Several people from our cohort have come in with the intention of starting a business or having just started a business, so with the intention of launching and growing it. Be great to hear more about that, what that looks like for them, what resources they've been able to leverage.
Yeah, I agree. We've actually got Ashley lined up tomorrow.
Perfect.
Yeah, so hopefully we can get a couple more, some experienced entrepreneurs in our class as well.
Yeah.
So I agree. I'd love to hear from them. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I think this was not too long.
Was this a
36 minutes?
Pleasant enough conversation?
Very pleasant.
Excellent.
Thanks.